In which country would you feel safer walking home alone at night? The United States or Denmark? Most people would probably guess Denmark, but the actual numbers are even more shocking than you might think. When we talk about safety and crime, we often rely on gut feeling and news headlines. But what do the real statistics tell us? And more importantly, what can we learn from comparing two vastly different societies? The gap between American and Danish crime rates isn't just large. It's enormous. But there's one key thing that most comparisons overlook, and I'll reveal that later in this video. I'm Stephen Højlund, a Danish social science PhD reporting for the Danish Dream Media Group. Let's start with the overall crime index. According to Numbeu's 2025 crime index, the United States scores 49, which falls into the moderate crime category. Denmark scores just 26, classified as low crime. That's nearly half the crime rate of the United States. The safety scale tells the same story in reverse. Denmark scores 74 out of 100 for safety, while the US scores only 51. These numbers come from nearly 20,000 contributors in the United States and over 800 in Denmark, so they represent real public perception. But perception is one thing. What about the actual crime statistics? Here's where things get really serious. The homicide rate in the United States is 4.7 per 100,000 people. In Denmark, it's only 0.85 per 100,000. That means you're nearly 6 times more likely to be murdered in the United States compared to Denmark. In absolute numbers, the US recorded almost 13,000 murders, while Denmark just had 47. And it's not just homicides. Rape rates in the United States stand out as 27 per 100,000 people compared to Denmark's 6.4. That's more than 4 times higher. So why is there such a massive difference? Well, there are several factors at play, and we'll dive into those in just a moment. But first, let's talk about property crimes as well. Those are things like theft, burglary, and car theft. In Denmark, property crimes have actually been dropping significantly over the years. In 2022, Denmark reported 276,000 property crimes, which is roughly half of what it was just a decade ago. The US, on the other hand, recorded a total of almost 12 million crimes across categories in comparable data. Yes, the US has a population over 30 times larger than Denmark's, but even when you adjust for population size, the US still has about 24 times Denmark's total crime volume. Public worries reflect this reality. 43% of Americans worry about car theft compared to just 17% in Denmark. For me personally, I don't even consider it an option to have my car stolen. What about worries about muggings or robberies? 43% in the US versus 21% in Denmark. And here's a telling question. How safe do people feel walking alone? In Denmark, 85% of people feel safe walking alone during the daytime. In the US, that number drops to 71%. But the real difference shows up at night. In Denmark, 69% feel safe walking alone after dark. In the US, well, here the number is just 44%. That's a massive gap in lived experience and peace of mind. And it's not just about violent crime. Drug-related worries are significantly higher in the US at 62 compared to 35 in Denmark. So what can explain this massive gap? There are of course the obvious factors. Strict gun laws in Denmark, for example, effective policing as well, low corruption. Denmark scores just 19 on corruption compared to the US's 43. But here's the thing that most people overlook. It's not just about laws or policing, it's about social cohesion and trust as well. Denmark ranks among the happiest and most equal societies in the world. When people trust their institutions and each other, crime becomes less attractive and less necessary. The US has far greater income inequality, fragmented social safety nets, and lower institutional trust. These aren't just abstract concepts, they directly impact crime rates and perceptions of safety. If people are desperate, they do desperate things. Even if gang violence exists in Denmark, the general perception has been that the violence was contained to the underworld, so to speak. That was also the case until recent years, when gangs have started to be more reckless and more random bystanders have been victims of gang violence as well. In the US, the perception of personal security is that anything can happen to you and that you have to prepare for the worst. Now, does Denmark have no crime at all? Of course not. Denmark does face organized crime, particularly drug trafficking and gang violence in urban areas like Copenhagen. In fact, Denmark ranks 148th globally in the 25 Organized Crime Index, showing moderate criminality with rising gang shootings. But even with these challenges, Denmark's state resilience and anti-corruption measures keep crime far more contained than in the United States. And if we look at the trends that is going on in the two countries, in Denmark, overall crime has been declining overall for the last decades. Total criminal offenses dropped from 532,000 in 12 to 473,000 in 22. Property crimes have been cut in half, robberies and thefts are down significantly. However, violent crimes have seen a slight uptick, largely due to gang-related activities spilling over from Sweden as well. In the US, violent crime has actually dropped over the past 25 years as well, but it remains significantly higher than Denmark's, and it varies widely from state to state. So both countries are improving in some areas, but the baseline gap remains massive. Before we wrap up, let's be honest about limitations. Perception-based data like Numbeo can reflect biases and isn't the same as official crime reports. Cross-national comparisons also face challenges. Different countries define and report crime differently. So while these numbers give us a strong overall picture, they are not perfect. But even with those, evidence is very clear. Denmark is significantly safer than the United States by almost every measure. So what's the takeaway here? If you care about safety, understanding these differences matters. Whether you are considering where to live, travel, or raise a family, crime rates are a crucial factor. While you are statistically still not likely to experience crime in either the United States or Denmark, it's still the feeling about security that matters. I've seen many Americans reporting on the differences living in Europe compared to the United States, and many of them report that they now don't have to look over their shoulder and don't have to scan a room for exits. These actions and thoughts are unfamiliar to most Danes and Europeans. At least I'm happy to live in a society where I don't have to worry about my own safety. If you found this video valuable, please hit that subscribe button right here so you don't miss future content. Also, share this video with a friend who might be curious about Denmark, the US, or crime statistics. Knowledge is power, and understanding these differences can help us all make better choices. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.